My friends and I had always been drawn to adventure, the kind that took us far from the comforts of city life. So, when we stumbled upon an abandoned campground during one of our hikes deep in the woods, curiosity got the better of us. We decided to make it our base camp for the weekend. Little did we know the horrors that awaited. The campground was nestled in a clearing surrounded by dense trees. It had that eerie aura of desolation, yet it felt oddly captivating. The old, dilapidated cabins stood like silent sentinels, their windows broken, and their wooden frames weathered by time. We set up our tents near a fire pit, our spirits high with excitement. As night descended upon the camp, we gathered around the flickering flames, sharing stories and laughter under the starry sky. On the first night, strange things began to happen. It started innocently enough, with the sound of rustling leaves and snapping twigs in the distance. We dismiss it as the wind playing tricks on us, but that uneasy feeling refused to leave. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Our tents were filled with strange, unsettling noises that seemed to come from just beyond the fabric. We whispered to each other, trying to rationalize the eerie sounds that surrounded us. It was on the second night that things escalated. As we sat around the campfire, the flames seemed to dance with a life of their own. Shadows shifted and elongated, casting grotesque figures on the ground. We laughed nervously, dismissing our unease as mere imagination. But then, it happened, a chilling, mournful wail echoed through the night. It was a sound that sent shivers down our spines, like the anguished cry of a soul in torment. Our laughter turned to silence as we scanned the darkness, searching for the source of the haunting sound. That night, sleep was impossible. The wailing continued, growing louder and more agonized with each passing hour. It was as if the very forest mourned a long-forgotten tragedy. I watched as fear etched itself onto the faces of my friends, and a sense of dread settled over us like a suffocating blanket. Morning brought no relief. We decided to investigate the campground during daylight, hoping to uncover the source of our terror. The old cabins bore silent witness to decades of abandonment, their windows like empty eye sockets. As we explored, we found remnants of a life once lived, a children's swing set overgrown with weeds, a rusted bicycle leaning against a decaying shed, and a set of shattered porcelain dolls scattered in the underbrush. It was as if the campground had been abandoned in haste, leaving behind a trail of memories frozen in time. That evening, as we sat around the campfire once more, we couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. Shadows danced in the periphery of our vision, and whispers seemed to emerge from the very trees themselves. Fear hung in the air like a tangible presence. As the night deepened, the wailing began anew, louder and more heart-wrenching than before. We couldn't endure another night of that mournful wailing. Fear had gripped us, and it was suffocating. We decided that leaving the abandoned campground during the night was our best option. With shaky hands, we packed our essentials, and as quietly as possible, we began our retreat. Our hearts pounded as we approached the dark trail, the chilling echoes of the wailing still haunting our thoughts. And then we saw it, a ghostly figure of a young boy standing in our path. His eyes were hollow, and his clothes were tattered. The moonlight danced eerily on his translucent form, and his mournful cries had now transformed into a sinister grin. "You can't leave," he whispered, his voice like a frigid breeze that sent shivers down our spines. Panic surged through us as we realized we were trapped between the ghostly figure and the horrors that lurked in the abandoned campground. Without a second thought, we turned and fled, seeking refuge in one of the old, decaying cabins. The air inside was damp and suffocating, filled with the scent of rot and decay. We huddled together, praying that the sinister apparition wouldn't follow us. Hours passed, and the night seemed endless. Our nerves were stretched to their limits, and exhaustion tugged at us like a heavy weight. And then the wailing started again, echoing through the forest. This time, it was closer, and it seemed to emanate from all directions. The chilling cries filled the cabin, and we covered our ears in a futile attempt to block them out. The ghostly figure of the boy materialized outside the cabin, his malevolent smile growing wider. "You can't escape," he taunted, his voice dripping with malice. The cabin door creaked open, and to our horror, the ghostly figure of the young boy stepped inside. Our hearts raced as we scrambled towards the broken windows, desperation driving us to escape the sinister presence that had invaded our refuge. With jagged glass scraping our skin, we tumbled out of the cabin and onto the forest floor. Pain was nothing compared to the terror that gripped us. As we scrambled to our feet, the ghostly boy followed, his malevolent grin never fading. Our only thought was to reach the return trail, to escape this nightmarish place and the vengeful spirit that pursued us. But as we ran, something even more horrifying began to unfold. Emerging from the shadows between the trees were more ghostly figures. They were children, their eyes vacant, their clothes tattered, and their faces twisted in eerie, otherworldly expressions. They moved with an unnatural grace, closing in around us as we desperately sought the path that would lead us back to safety. The forest had become a realm of nightmares, and we were trapped within it. Through sheer determination, we pushed forward, driven by the instinct to survive. The path to escape was ahead, illuminated by the faint glow of the moonlight. We ran as if our lives depended on it. The ghostly children pursued us relentlessly, their spectral forms twisting and contorting. We could feel their cold breath on our necks, their eerie whispers filling our ears. Just as we reached the edge of the forest, we heard one final, chilling wail, more mournful and anguished than any before. It was the voice of the ghostly boy who had first confronted us. We ran until we reached the safety of our car, the nightmarish sounds of the forest fading into the distance. Our bodies were bruised and our minds scarred, but we were alive. We knew we had come face to face with something beyond our understanding, something malevolent and vengeful. We decided to research what happened at this place. Our research led us to a local historian who revealed the grim tale of the campground. Decades ago, it had been a thriving summer retreat for families. But tragedy had struck one fateful night when a fire had engulfed the cabins, claiming the lives of many children. The place had been abandoned ever since. It began with the words etched in fear across my brother Daniel's last message to me. "David, I've found it. The entrance to the other world. I'm going in." My brother had always been obsessed with the paranormal. We grew up listening to his stories of ghostly encounters, reading books on unexplained phenomena, and watching countless horror movies. His bedroom was a museum of the bizarre, filled with everything from Ouija boards to antique seance equipment. I never truly believed in the supernatural, but for Daniel, it was a way of life. But then, 2 weeks ago, he went missing. Daniel had been on one of his excursions into the unknown, searching for evidence of the paranormal in an old forest that locals had dubbed the Cursed Forest. This place had a dark history, filled with legends of spirits and strange occurrences. The townsfolk steered clear of it, and the local authorities refused to enter its tangled depths. When his last message arrived, my heart sank. I knew he had discovered something he couldn't resist, something that had lured him into the heart of that cursed forest. I couldn't ignore it, I couldn't let my brother vanish without trying to find him. So, I gathered a group of his closest friends, people who shared his passion for the unexplained. Sarah, his ex-girlfriend who never quite got over him, Mark, his best friend since childhood, and Lisa, who shared Daniel's fascination with the supernatural. Together, we set off to find my brother, to venture into the cursed forest. As we arrived at the outskirts of the forest, I could feel an oppressive atmosphere settling around us. The air grew thick, and the sunlight dimmed. The trees loomed overhead, their branches twisted like skeletal fingers reaching for the heavens. Mark, who had a sense of direction that rivaled a GPS, took the lead with a map of the forest in hand. We walked the path my brother had walked. The first day was uneventful, but as night fell, an eerie feeling settled in. The forest came alive with unsettling sounds, whispers on the wind, faint cries that echoed in the distance, and rustling in the underbrush. We set up camp under the looming trees, the crackling fire offering the only solace in the encroaching darkness. Sarah, ever the skeptic, brushed off the unsettling sounds as mere animals. But I saw the doubt in her eyes. The second day was when things began to change. As Mark unfolded the map to chart our course, he froze, a furrow forming between his brows. He pointed to a path that was distinctly absent from the map. "How is this possible?" Mark muttered, his voice shaky. Lisa laughed nervously, "Maybe it's a shortcut. A hidden trail." We decided to follow the mysterious path. After all, finding Daniel was our top priority, and this might be a sign that we were on the right track. But as we ventured further, I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was toying with us. Hours passed, and we should have reached a clearing by now, according to the map. Instead, the forest remained dense and unyielding. The path seemed to twist and turn, leading us deeper into a labyrinth of towering trees. The forest was changing around us. Paths on the map disappeared without a trace, swallowed by the ancient woods, while new, uncharted trails appeared like scars on the landscape. Panic simmered beneath the surface, but we pressed on, driven by the need to find Daniel. As the days turned into nights, we became disoriented, our sense of time slipping away. We were caught in a never-ending loop of trees and shadows, the forest toying with us, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. Then, on the fourth day, disaster struck. Sarah fell ill, her skin growing pale, and she trembled uncontrollably. We had no choice but to set up camp, our tent surrounded by the ominous trees. Sarah's condition worsened, and her fevered murmurs took on a disturbing quality. She spoke of paths that led to nowhere and of a presence that watched us from the shadows. It was as if the very forest had infected her with its malevolence. With no signal on our phones, we couldn't call for help. We were isolated, trapped in this cursed place with no way out. Desperation gnawed at us as we searched for any sign of escape. And then, as dawn broke on the fifth day, Sarah's illness took a sinister turn. She spoke in a voice that was not her own, a guttural, inhuman growl. Her eyes turned black, devoid of any trace of humanity. Suddenly, Sarah began running through the dense trees, and our group hurriedly followed her. She moved with an eerie determination, as if guided by some unseen force. The twisted forest seemed to part before her, revealing a hidden path that led us deeper into its depths. As we continued our chase, we stumbled upon an eerie, dilapidated building that seemed completely out of place in the heart of the cursed forest. The structure was made of decaying wood and overgrown with moss, its windows shattered and its roof sagging under the weight of time. Without hesitation, we entered the forsaken building, drawn by an inexplicable force that seemed to guide our every step. The air inside was heavy with a palpable sense of dread, and the dim light filtering through the broken windows cast long, menacing shadows. And there, in a room that felt like the epicenter of this malevolent place, we found my brother Daniel. He was pale, his eyes wide with terror, and he huddled in the corner of the room, his arms wrapped tightly around his trembling form. Dirt and grime covered his clothes, and his hair was matted with sweat. Daniel! I cried out, rushing to his side. We've been searching for you. Are you okay? His gaze shifted slowly from the dark corner of the room to me, and when he spoke, his voice quivered with a haunting intensity. You shouldn't have come here, David. None of you should be here. My heart sank as I realized that something was horribly wrong. This wasn't the brother I knew. His obsession with the paranormal had led him into this nightmare, and whatever he had encountered had changed him. Sarah, Mark, and Lisa watched in stunned silence, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and confusion. We're getting you out of here, I said firmly, reaching for Daniel's trembling hand. But as I touched him, a chilling realization washed over me. He was ice cold, as if he had been drained of all warmth. And then, from the shadows of the room, a sinister whisper emerged, a voice that was not my brother's. You can't leave. None of you can. Before I could react, the room plunged into darkness, and an otherworldly scream echoed through the air. Panic set in, and I fumbled for a flashlight, illuminating the room in a stark, harsh beam of light. But what I saw sent a shiver down my spine that I would never forget. My brother Daniel was no longer huddled in the corner. Instead, he now stood at the center of a grotesque tableau, his body contorted and suspended in midair, as if held by invisible hands. Around him, the walls of the room were adorned with eerie symbols that seemed to writhe and pulse with a malevolent energy. The very essence of the cursed forest seemed to converge upon this nightmarish scene. Daniel, please! I cried out, my voice quaking with terror. Snap out of it. You're stronger than this. But my brother's response was not his own. It was the same guttural, inhuman growl that had emanated from Sarah when she succumbed to the forest's malevolence. It was a voice that carried the weight of ancient malevolence, and it sent shivers down our spines. Mark, Lisa, and Sarah huddled close together, their faces etched with terror and disbelief. This was beyond anything we had ever imagined, beyond the realms of science or reason. The cursed forest had ensnared us in its sinister web, and my brother had become a conduit for its malevolent power. We have to break the connection. Mark shouted, his voice trembling but determined. As we stood there, paralyzed by fear and uncertainty, an idea began to form in the back of my mind. It was a desperate and dangerous plan, but it was the only option we had left. If we didn't act quickly, my brother and, potentially, all of us would be lost to the cursed forest forever. With newfound determination, I turned to my friends, my voice unwavering despite the terror that coursed through my veins. We need to disrupt these symbols. They're the source of the forest's power. Mark, Lisa, and Sarah nodded in reluctant agreement, their faces pale with fear. We knew that we had to act quickly, but the room felt like a trap, and the symbols seemed to react to our every movement. We approached the nearest wall, our trembling hands reaching out to deface the symbols. As we scratched and broke the wooden walls, Danny jumped on Mark's back and bit off his ear. After Mark was knocked down, Daniel attacked me and started choking me with inhuman strength. A cacophony of unearthly screams and growls filled the air, drowning out our frantic efforts. It was as if the forest fought back, unleashing its malevolent power to protect the symbols that bound my brother and this nightmarish place together. And then, just as we thought we could go no further, a blinding flash of light erupted from the symbols, accompanied by a deafening roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. It was a climax of malevolence, a final, desperate attempt by the forest to maintain its grip on us. But as the light faded and the room returned to an eerie stillness, we knew that something had changed. The symbols, once pulsing with dark energy, had lost their malevolent glow. My brother Daniel came to himself. "David," he whispered, his voice weak and uncertain. "Yes, "It's me," I replied, relief washing over me. "We're getting out of here, all of us." The horrors we had witnessed would haunt us for the rest of our lives, a testament to the darkness that lurked within the heart of each cursed forest. And as we ventured back into the world we knew, forever changed by our ordeal, we vowed never to speak of what had truly happened in that nightmarish place. For some secrets were best left buried, and some forests were best left unexplored, lest they claim the souls of those who dared to enter. Camping had always been our escape from the chaotic urban life that seemed to swallow us whole. So, when an opportunity arose to spend a week in a remote forest area, we eagerly seized it. The promise of solitude and untouched natural beauty was irresistible. We packed our camping gear, drove deep into the wilderness, and found a perfect spot near the forest's edge. The air was crisp, the trees tall and imposing, and the sounds of nature were like a soothing symphony. Everything felt perfect, until it wasn't. The first day was a dream. We reveled in the serenity of the forest, explored the nearby riverbank, and marveled at the wildflowers that dotted the landscape. At night, we sat by the campfire, the stars overhead as bright as I had ever seen them. On the second day, things began to take an unsettling turn. As we hiked deeper into the forest, we stumbled upon a hidden campsite. It appeared abandoned, with tents and a fire pit surrounded by peculiar symbols etched into the earth. Curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to investigate. To our surprise, we weren't alone. A group of people emerged from the trees, dressed in tattered clothes and bearing warm smiles. They introduced themselves as fellow campers, like-minded souls who had sought refuge in the wilderness. The leader of the group, a woman named Isabella, explained that they shared the forest with those who craved solitude and simplicity. They welcomed us with open arms, offering us a place by their campfire and stories of their own journeys into the wild. At first, it all seemed harmless, even comforting. We shared stories, assisted with camp chores, and enjoyed the camaraderie of our new friends. The forest, with its beauty and tranquility, had brought us together. As the days passed, we began to notice unsettling changes in our newfound companions. Their smiles, once warm, grew strained, and their eyes lost their kindness, replaced by an eerie emptiness. Late at night, we heard whispers and caught glimpses of bizarre rituals around their campfire. It was as if a veil of normalcy had been lifted, revealing a darkness that chilled our souls. One moonless night, hidden in the shadows, we overheard whispered conversations among the campers. They spoke of a sinister ceremony, a ritual that would please their true master, the devil. Our hearts raced as the horrifying truth dawned upon us. We had unwittingly stumbled upon a cult that worshipped evil. Fear gripped us, but we knew we had to escape. The cult, once friendly, now watched our every move, their smiles concealing malevolent intentions. We were trapped, isolated in the unforgiving wilderness with no way to call for help. We decided that our only chance of survival was to slip away during one of their rituals. As the cult gathered for their midnight ceremony, we seized our opportunity. We left our campsite quietly, our hearts pounding with terror, and ventured deeper into the forest, guided only by the pale light of the moon. Hours turned into an eternity as we navigated the treacherous terrain, never daring to look back. Dawn broke on the horizon, revealing a hidden cave, a sanctuary from the cult's relentless pursuit. We entered, our breaths ragged, our bodies trembling. In the dim light, we huddled together, knowing that the cult was still out there, hunting us with unholy fervor. Just as our breathing calmed, we heard faint footsteps echoing through the forest. The cult had come in search of us, their voices carrying through the still night air. We had to make a choice: stay hidden and hope they passed us by, or venture deeper into the cave, into the unknown. We chose the latter, driven by desperation and fear. The cave's passageway led us further underground, its walls closing in as we descended into darkness. We had no idea where this subterranean journey would take us, but it was our only chance at escape. As we navigated the labyrinthine tunnels, our only source of light a dwindling flashlight. We felt as if we had entered a nightmarish underworld, far removed from the tranquil forest we had initially sought. Suddenly we stumbled upon a chamber deep within the cave. Walls were adorned with ancient, cryptic symbols, and at its center, a pit plunged into impenetrable darkness. We heard whispers, soft and sinister, rising from the pit below. Cautiously, we approached, our fear palpable in the stifling air. And then, from the depths of the pit, a chilling voice spoke, reverberating through the chamber and sending shivers down our spines. "Welcome, my lost souls," it hissed. Fear gripped us, but we refused to surrender. With trembling hands, we searched for an escape route, our eyes falling on a narrow crevice in the chamber's wall. It was our only chance. We slipped through the narrow passage, our bodies scraped and bruised. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we emerged from the cave, blinking in the blinding sunlight. Fortunately for us, the path leading to the car was in front of us. Breathing heavily, we reached our car, hidden from the cult's prying eyes. Relief washed over us as we fumbled for the keys and started the engine. The familiar purr of the car was a symphony of safety, a stark contrast to the horrors we had just escaped. Our lives had been forever changed by that harrowing experience. We had ventured into the wilderness seeking solitude and beauty, but what we had found was a nightmare beyond our darkest imaginings. And as we returned to the world we had left behind, we carried with us the knowledge that true evil could lurk in the most unsuspecting of places, waiting to ensnare the unsuspecting and the curious alike.